I'd like to welcome everyone to the Pyth Workshop Week. I think we've got a pretty amazing week planned. And first, a big thank you to Karen Bailey for setting up what looks like an amazing space here for this week. And last week, there was some incredible stuff going on with the Solana workshop as well. And also a big thank you to Steve Kaminsky, who has probably invited most of you here and has done an amazing job in coordinating the agenda and schedule for this. All right, so today, in my presentation here, I'm going to go through a couple things. We're going to look at what Pyth has accomplished. So number one, why are we doing this, and what is Pyth trying to accomplish? Number two, what did Pyth do in 2021? We'll talk about the white paper, which was just released today. And then what is Pyth planning for 2022? And if we've got any time at the end, we'll have a couple of questions. All right, so why are we doing this? All right, so we'll take an example. A bilateral wager between, let's say, Saeed and myself on the outcome of the price of the euro-dollar at 12 p.m. Chicago time tomorrow, on Wednesday. So with smart contracts, as you all know, this is something that can be programmed in, and it's immutable. And so we can have whole parts of the Earth shut down their power, and it will still happen. And we can have teams go on strike, banks shut their windows, and this will still happen. Now, the only part that's going to be tricky is where are you going to get that price of euro-dollar for 12 p.m. Chicago time in that smart contract? So number one, the conclusion is smart contracts require real-world data. Well, if Saeed and I have this smart contract between the two of us, and I provide the euro-dollar price, I'm going to be biased. And so if I said that it's going to be above 133, I may pick 134. If Saeed provides it, he may do the opposite. So we need data that is trustworthy, or hi-fi. Example number two, let's go a little bit more complex. So smart contract is no longer just a one-time agreement between me and Saeed, but it's something that has a continuous contract, allows anyone to wager against anyone else using a particular price. So for here, if you have a delayed price feed into this smart contract, then you're going to have asymmetry of information, and someone's going to be at a big disadvantage, and it's not really going to be a successful platform. It's not going to work. So conclusion three, smart contracts require time-sensitive data. You put it all together, it gives you largely the Oracle problem. Smart contracts require decentralized, high-fidelity, time-sensitive real-world data. All right, so how do Oracle networks scale in this problem? Because this is an important part of how Pyth is positioned. So the first thing I want to do is take a little sidestep and look at where we are in the scaling process for Web3 and for crypto. So here's a couple slides on some monthly active user rates. So Phantom wallets currently have got 2 million users. Bitcoin, number of active wallets, roughly about 30 million. Ethereum, about 15 million. Coinbase has got 7.5 million. So put these all together, and how do these compare with, say, the internet or social media platforms? Well, you can see here that social media platforms like Facebook have got over 2 billion users. You'd have to go back quite a while before you'd have something below 100 million users. If you look at the internet as a whole, you actually have to go back before 1997, where there were 70 million users. 1998, you had 147, and 1996, you had 36. So it was a very steep appreciation curve at that time. But that puts us in perspective of a really small number of active users on DeFi, even if you're generous. So let's say that DeFi is going to scale, right? We probably all believe that, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And we think that it's going to be over this 100 million users that, is kind of less than 100 million users today. We'll probably be over there at some point in the near future. How is this going to really scale, and what are other Oracle solutions doing in this space? So let's take a look at how other Oracle networks work. So the reporter networks is really the way that oracles have attempted to get data onto blockchains prior to Pyth. And so if you can look at this chart, you can see that you've got middlemen and reporters, and then a node consensus and blockchain. So you've got this very kind of long process to get things on, where the reporter nodes are grabbing the data from another source that they don't necessarily have the access to the data from. So this doesn't scale really well. And why not? So we've got a couple of reasons. The first is middlemen make this expensive both from a time and a cost perspective. So they have to buy the data effectively from someone that could be buying it from a time perspective or buying it from a cost perspective. Reporters don't necessarily secure the appropriate data licenses for the data that they're making available. So they could be screen scraping this from Yahoo Finance, and they may be in breach of the terms of that website. This free rider problem of taking data that is intended for the use of one person and making it available for lots of people or for blockchains ends up being a big problem. It's a leaky faucet, and when it becomes big enough, when the market becomes big enough, it turns into a torrent. And then when it becomes an existential threat to IP owners, that model usually breaks. So to take an example from digital music, think about in the late 90s when internet was where I showed you before, right? Internet is kind of above 100 million, but not that much. And you had an immature network. You didn't have these hundreds of millions of people on, certainly not billions of people on. The rate of internet adoption had been increasing, but it wasn't yet an existential threat on digital music for the record labels. They didn't really know how to tackle this problem either. There's a very popular music app at that time called Napster. And it was a reporter network where nodes would go out. They would take music from somewhere and make it available for anyone to download for free. And this worked well when there was about sub 100 million users. Over 100 million users, Napster became a huge existential threat to record labels. There are lawsuits, but more importantly, there was actually a flood of spam, which created a lot of music that, as soon as you'd download it, would kind of make your ears bleed because it was corrupt. And these were created from people who didn't want to see this Oracle network succeed. Eventually, you had the spam outpace the quality music, and the product effectively became unusable. Because it's a reporter network, the nodes that were passing the music through had nothing to be able to do from a quality perspective. And so they just continued to pass through this spam, and the product effectively became unusable. A few years later, Spotify created a platform where the owners of the IP, so the record labels, but also the music producers, the bands themselves or the artists themselves, made their songs available for download or for listening. And they were part of the economic workflow. It was digital first, so the barriers to entry were very low. You had all sorts of alternative ways for people to publish their music. And there was an equitable model where the more popular the songs were, the more the owners were economically compensated. I think you can get where I'm going with this. So the Pyth network is designed to be a first-party network where the owners are the owners of the IP, of the data, are publishing themselves. This is the model that scales. So you can take a look at this workflow here. And so you've got traders and exchanges publishing directly onto the blockchain. Compare that with a reporter network, which is middlemen reporting from largely middlemen, other aggregators. It's nice, right? It's very clean and streamlined. Makes a lot of sense. Seems like it'll scale. Here's a very kind of cartoonish version of what I just showed you. One is fun and involves all sorts of steps, and one is fast and smooth like lasers. So Pyth network is a decentralized data oracle solution designed to accurately bring real-world data on-chain at sub-second timescales. No batching of time from middlemen, no risks of it being cut off because of no data licensing. The publishers are the data owners themselves, and they range from tier 1 exchanges to some of the largest trading firms. So Pyth is a future-proof marketplace for data. It's where traditional data sellers and these new non-traditional data sellers meet to provide data to empower Web3. It's not hacked together like a Rube Goldberg experiment. When Web3 grows to hundreds of millions or billions of users, data providers are not going to be looking to put Pyth out of existence. Instead, they're going to be celebrating the growth. And 3, Pyth Network has pioneered confidence intervals, an innovative new output that gives end users the information they need to accurately integrate the data. So this is a very, very big thing. And it's one of those remarkable innovations that I don't think people have fully yet understood. And it's part of the reason for that is it's very unique to first-party oracles. You couldn't do this if you were getting data from Yahoo Finance. Yahoo Finance doesn't offer it. You couldn't do this if you were getting data from another third-party aggregator that you were buying it from. So on the one hand, it's really hard to do. On the other hand, it's very, very powerful to be able to interpret the amount of liquidity that's available at a certain time, or how confident you are as an application, how much you want to put into that confidence. So if you see that a small amount of, or there's a very small confidence with a particular price update, you may want to choose to take limited actions. If that gets very high, you may want to take much higher actions. This gives the scaling ability, a gradient for something that historically has only ever had a binary output. So it's really important. I think that over time, people will start to appreciate how big this confidence interval is as a change. All right. So let's go over the Pyth network in 2021. 2021, Pyth launched on Solana. It was in April. And there were 10 symbols, 3 publishers. It was for the hackathon in DevNet. Since then, it's grown to 43 publishers by the end of the year. There are 57 symbols, over 40 integrations on Solana, and the total value secured today is over $1 billion. BitData Association, who's published the white paper, has got over 20 founding members, and their staff is about 10 or so employees that have joined. Drilling into the publishers, so as I mentioned, there's over 40. It includes 7 crypto exchanges, some of the largest exchanges. We've got FTX. We've got Bitstamp, one of the oldest crypto exchanges out there. There's 2 FX exchanges, 30 trading firms, and the trading firms, and 3 US equity exchanges. Having a combination of US equity exchanges in addition to trading firms is a really powerful combination. The trading firms are able to contribute the best bid and offer that they have at any time for any of the markets that are made available on their exchange. Trading firms are able to derive prices from the volumes that they do. And this covers an incredible amount of the US equity market. And we think that no oracle comes anywhere close to this level of data coverage. All right, symbols. This is the breakdown of the symbols. There's 34 crypto, 10 equity, 13 FX, 1 metal today. And we have the number of publishers that range, for the symbols, range from 3 is the lowest to 27 on the highest end. And the average number of data publishers per symbol today stands at 9, which is pretty cool, and continues to go up higher every week. All right, so today was a really important day for Pyth's history, and the BitData Association published the white paper. It's available for download on the Pyth Network website or the BitData Association website. This is a really big moment for Pyth. It effectively it shows out a way for Pyth to codify what has been developed currently. So it outlines a future for a vision for the future of Pyth. So the association and network participants will guide the initial development of the protocol based on the ideas in the white paper with feedback from the broader crypto community and governance input from Pyth token holders who will help secure the accuracy of the data of the Pyth network. Number two, it introduces for the first time publicly the Pyth token. So this is a utility token that's going to play an important role in the ecosystem, help make data more secure, and so that DeFi can continue to scale and grow. It expands on the design of the protocol that powers the network, and the goal of the design is to make the Pyth network self-sustaining and decentralized. And finally, it describes the roles of the participants of the network and the mechanisms that coordinate them. So up to this point, Pyth has largely been in production version of solving this problem of getting high-fidelity data on-chain. It's really borrowed the reputation from the data providers. What the white paper shows is a way to codify the reputation element and create a sustainable model so that the data can be trusted, where high-quality data is rewarded and bad quality data could be penalized. Tomorrow we've got a lunch and learn with Jant to go through the paper in detail, so I highly recommend staying and attending that one. I think it'll be great. All right. Let's keep going. So the Pyth network in 2022, and what are we looking to achieve? Oops. Here we are. So we'd like to get to 10 chains. Today, Solana is the home chain for Pyth, where all the aggregation occurs, using the wormhole as a decentralized mechanism to publish Pyth pricing as a result to other layer ones in a decentralized way that has their security. We expect to get to 10 chains. So engineers are currently testing Pyth on Terra, Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, Algorand, Ethereum, Polygon, already today. This is going to scale with Wormhole. So as Wormhole adds new chains, which they're doing on a rate of about, I think, 1 or 2 a month right now, since they've launched, we expect Pyth to be able to piggyback on that growth. This is a very important point for Pyth. It's where we're focusing a tremendous amount of attention and where we're expecting the biggest growth from applications that can use this data. So fast blockchains are really going to be the home for Pyth, and making sure that Pyth is the primary oracle for them to use in whatever they're building. We're going to have over 100 publishers. So we expect that the category of publishers will continue in the path that we've already laid out. So more trading firms, more exchanges. But we also hope to see a new category emerge as well. This will be from higher regulated institutions. Could be asset managers, could be banks. As we start to see more and more interest from more people, the inbounds just increase. And as we've got over 40 today, that becomes a pretty substantial area for data providers to want to showcase their fact that they're in crypto today. They're doing something in DeFi. And Pyth is a great place for them to get started. It's got a really robust team to help walk through the initial technical challenges. And we love to see that continue. And there's been no letdown of interest. So we think that number will grow. Further, the fact that the white paper outlines an incentive mechanism that will reward really high quality data, this shows how we can have an equitable distribution for new data providers to join. Symbols, 150. We're at 57 today. We're going to continue to add based on demand. Demand is more heavily skewed towards crypto today. And we would expect that to continue as more chains are added. Tokens native to those chains will probably be one of the biggest growth areas. But what we certainly want to add is additional categories for products that fit into the financial market data category. So this could be continuous vol, could be things like futures, really potential to expand in this versus what we currently have, and give us a new category. Total value secure, we're hoping to have 25 billion. We internally tend to call this TVS the hard way. So the way that the team calculates total value secured is it looks through the protocol, works with a team who's integrated, and will only count if Pyth has been integrated into the smart contract code. If there's just a link to a website, this does not get counted into the TVS. I know that sounds very obvious, but that's not the way that it's done by others. And so we pride ourselves on making sure that this is a very accurate number. So 25 billion is the goal that we have. And we expect to see the BitData Association grow, the number of members continue to increase as well. And there's lots of job openings on the association. So if anyone knows people, please send them our way. All right, so these are my prepared things. We've got plenty of space for some questions if anyone wants to have anything articulated or explained here in these first opening session. So regulatory issues for equity prices. So the way that Pyth currently is set up is that the data has been broadcast. So data is being broadcast to in a way where it's almost like you're broadcasting like a radio wave. They call it uncontrolled distribution. And right now it's available for people to use and use in applications. Pyth does not prescribe what it's to be used for. It's just simply made available. And so from a regulatory perspective, there's no issues with publishing or making data available. And so that's really been the view that Pyth has taken. Although, I'll give the standard kind of caveat of, our teams obviously works with regulators to make sure that we're compliant and are taking things very serious. Yeah, it's a good question. So the question was, if we're looking to increase the number of symbols from 57 to 150, what percentage are going to be equity symbols? Equity is a relatively small part of the galaxy today at 57. This is going to be demand-driven. So if there's a heavy demand for equities, we would expect them to be a large percentage. Given the initial demand, I think that it'll come mostly through crypto for the next couple of months. But over time, I think that what Pyth will enable, when we get up the adoption curve, and you think about what does Web3 look like, you have to take a second to imagine that it was impossible to envision what the internet would have looked like in the mid-90s when everyone was on it, right? It was a couple of people sending cat photos to each other, and there was no, because you didn't have this network involved, there was no productivity benefits. You couldn't really use it for work because your colleagues weren't on it. You couldn't really use it for school because your teachers didn't accept it. So it was really difficult to imagine. Cut to a point where today, we're connected to the internet 24/7. And every company is on the internet 24/7. Every employer is there. So you have these huge potential for productivity benefits. And the crypto side, what we're picturing is that the world will grow and that crypto, especially with DeFi, will take over a large percentage of what we do on financial applications on the internet today, and will have some element to composability with traditional finance. At that point, you need to have high-quality data, particularly if you're doing something on, say, a traditional broker, and you've got a view into your account, and part of it has got crypto, part of it has got equities. you need to be able to stitch that together. And so you can picture a world where an equity broker like a Schwab will need to have high-quality data that is on-chain, right? That comes from a source, and they're going to have to go through getting it on-chain in the same dilemma that other blockchain applications will have to go through. And you can picture having a complete need for data. And we fundamentally believe that will happen. So we think that getting data on-chain for equities is most certainly something that's going to happen. We're not sure if it's going to happen this year. It's difficult to predict. I wouldn't have been able to predict that NFTs were going to be a huge thing this year, or that play to earn would have been huge. So I'll leave that to be a surprise for next year. But as of right now, the trajectory tends to be, crypto is where we've got the highest demand. There's another element to it where we're looking at what can Pyth do potentially to scale to hundreds or thousands of other products. There's a tremendous amount of inbound appetite for things that Pyth can use that's off-chain. And so that's something that's being explored as well. But the primary focus for today is to develop and grow that demand that's on-chain, because it's a big one, right? When we go from hundreds of millions to billions of users, it's going to be pretty meaningful to be the core infrastructure that those applications are built on. Thanks for the question. OK, got it. Yeah. So the question was, right now, Pyth has got a really small subset of equities. Is there a point where the demand becomes the entire category of equities? Yeah, again, I would say that I think that we'll have to get there. When you're composing on Solana as a layer 1, there's some really good benefits. So it's very equitable. Everyone gets to see this at the same time. So when Jump or FTX or Jane Street or Susquehanna, we send our prices on, we send it to Solana. We don't send it to a centralized source. And someone who wants to audit the integrity of that chain is able to do so. That's an important tenet of making sure that people feel confident and comfortable with Pyth. It's not done off-chain. It's all done fundamentally on-chain in a way that's fair and transparent. There are certain limitations to the amount of bandwidth that you can have on Solana today. And so Solana's in beta, mainnet beta, and it continues to scale and grow. And there'll be more capacity in the future than there is today. They have a pretty robust roadmap. And so we need to make sure that we're respectful of the amount of usage that Pyth can have on Solana today. And so when we consider what products we're going to put on there, we need to first fit into our primary category of making sure that Pyth is able to satisfy the demand of the application builders on-chain, on any of the chains, right? So if someone's building on Terra and they have need for a particular symbol, it'll go through, it'll be aggregated on Solana, it'll go over the wormhole, and it'll be made available to them. So because of that scarcity of resource space, we need to pick our spots. And as demand comes in for additional equities, I would imagine that it comes in the ones that are the most popular to trade. There's initial demand for this, and that's why the equities that you see are the ones that are generally the more exciting ones, like GameStop, or there's even some of the more liquid ones like Apple and Amazon, which I think on the one hand helps people from an imagination perspective. Like, wow, this is something that's achievable today, right? This is done with 400 milliseconds of latency. That's powerful, right? And that's something that you can't get. It's fully distributed. I can use it. I don't need to pay licensing for it. I can integrate this into my smart contract, and I know that it's coming from a good source, right? It's not going to be shut off at some point in the future. So I think that we just need to find our kind of demand, build and cater to that demand, and then continue to grow from there. But as I mentioned before, there is appetite within Pyth to expand to thousands and tens of thousands of instruments. And at that point, we would like to cover the full galaxy of equities, as well as the galaxy of the galaxy of fixed income products and so on. But they'll take some time. Yeah. So right now, it's, as I mentioned, the big benefits of doing this on a public blockchain is you get to borrow the security from them. And you don't have to convince the world that this sidechain is secure, right? Everyone understands the trust model of Solana. They understand that it's built by nodes, that nodes are not the same nodes that are going to be publishing data. If you're publishing data on an off-chain, one of the challenges that you're going to have is convincing people that that's a fair market, right? Because effectively, whoever's aggregating off-chain, unless you've got some really robust way to demonstrate that this is a provably not manipulated market, it could be tougher to articulate that this is fair. And I think this is a challenge that, for instance, other Oracle networks that use peer-to-peer matching have. It's a fundamental lack of trust. And so Pyth does this on Solana because it's a really easy way to integrate, have it be auditable. The provenance of the chain has not been just constructed, right? What's been constructed is the ability to send data to this smart contract with confidence intervals, have it aggregated in a way that's sophisticated, that can be robust from any Oracle attack, but leverage the base of Solana. So that's what the decisions are now, and that's where we're building towards for at least the foreseeable. But it's a good question, and something we've considered and thought about. Yeah. If the network speeds up, will the 400 millisecond block time speed up?
Theoretically have more points of data, right?
Yeah, so I think what will happen is the breadth will expand, right? So the number of symbols that can be run at any one time will expand. And there are some improvements that are going out now to allow publishers to batch together updates. And that will give some kind of cost savings and reduce the message count already. In Solana version 1.9, there's further kind of cost savings that allow this to scale as well. But I don't think the 400 millisecond time will change. I think that's kind of physics fast on having validators that are geographically dispersed. But yeah, we would certainly expect that the breadth of how many symbols can be updated at any given time will increase. Thanks. Let's go over here.
You described the Pyth token as being a utility token. Could you describe a little bit about how that will flow through the ecosystem?
Yeah. Yeah, so the Pyth token is largely going to be used to secure the quality of the data. And it borrows that model from proof of stake, right? So take your standard proof of stake setup. Validators need to post a certain stake, and so long as they're agreeing on the consensus and they're trustworthy and they're accurate, then they will be rewarded and compensated. If they go down for some period of time or they did something malicious, they'd be slashed. So that model works really well with data, right? So if we can figure out if you assume that 51% of the nodes are honest, and this is something that over 40 data providers, you get reasonable level of confidence that you're going to have a kind of a group that's going to be diverse enough, and especially since they're largely trading firms who are probably not going to share information, exchanges that are certainly not looking to do an Oracle manipulation. This is not their primary business. So you've got this level of diversity. Over 100, you can get really confident. So the token model requires data publishers to stake. So just like in that validator model and proof of stake, they're rewarded if their data is accurate. And if they are largely off, then there's a slashing or a penalty for it. What's really kind of unique about Pyth is you've got a number of levels of catches on the data security, right? The data accuracy. So the first one is on the aggregation, and Jant will describe this tomorrow about how aggregation works. It's not as simple as an average. It looks at outliers. And so that's sort of your first area to catch. Second area is your confidence interval. If you have a wide dispersions, your confidence interval would represent this. And then the last area would be this stake. So power users or professional users or kind of the enterprises of blockchain applications are willing to pay fees for the data in exchange for access to the data stake in the event that it's wrong. So let's say that the data comes out and compared to the market on NYSE, Apple on Pyth is way off. Those who have paid fees, data fees, will be eligible to receive that stake that's been put there by the data providers. So they're slashing, and then that's paid out to someone who's paid into fees. It's a cool model, right? Because it means that professional style users will subsidize this for amateur users. It's a similar model that, like you could think about GitHub has used something similar. Microsoft Office Suite is kind of similar. These power users make this available for others, so we like that sense. And also there's a added security layer where you've got not just the payment itself, but the penalty from data providers really confirms their requirement to publish accurate data. Whether or not the data is accurate, I'll let Jen get into the specifics, but it looks at some delay versus the aggregate, so it's not going to be easily gameable. It's not like some regression to the mean where everyone could play this game and quote the last price and so on. So again, I'll let Jen get into that. I don't want to steal his thunder. It's like a long session, and he'll describe how things are being built and the mechanics to it. It's fairly complex, but I'd say that the team's working on it. We hope to have large components of that working this year. What I can say with more confidence, though, is that we hope to have the reward mechanism coming up to reward data providers with Pyth tokens in a very short time frame. So this is something that we'd like to have up in sort of a couple months. It may not be the full element of all the details of the white paper, but things like that should be in months. And then the standard kind of governance elements where you're voting on how the protocol is going to upgrade certain components of it, or even weights and things like that. That will happen much sooner, and so I think that would be a couple weeks away for the governance. It's this standard SPL governance that Solana has built, but then customized to fit into a scalable way for Pyth to grow into the details of the white paper. So it borrows the Solana audits from that security perspective, and then it's got some of its own magic for Pyth. That's right. That's right. Yeah, you could think about it as insurance. It's the white paper calls it the data stake, but it ends up achieving the same mechanism or mechanics. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Yeah. So how do we? Sorry. The question was, how do we make it? How do you incentivize which symbols are going to be added? Is that right? So that one hasn't gone into detail on the white paper. I think we were looking at a couple of different models, things like curation that the graph uses, but has had some difficulties. So there'll be discussions around this one, and largely will probably come down to a governance decision, at least initially. All right. All right, thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.